I'm best known as Roxanne's cousin. I am a walking, breathing, living example of doing something completely different the second half of your life. So nowhere is there on any bucket list of mine does it say I want to grow up to be an author. I want to write a book. It's not on there anywhere. It just happened. It's probably a whole nother fireside, but essentially I had a dream, and in that dream I was shown my hands holding a book, and I knew it was my book, and I was 50 years old at that time.
Wow.
And I didn't like that dream, but I knew it was more than just a random dream, and so I fought against it and didn't tell anybody about it. And it turned into, I knew what it was this first book, Finding Hope in the Journey. It was that book that I saw, and I knew that the text written was mine, and that kind of became a calling for me. Eventually, after a lot of argumentative prayers with Heavenly Father, I agreed that I would jump in to something that I had never done before. I'm a business major from Arizona State University. I'm not a lit major, all of these things. So I knew I could write. I loved writing through school and college.
Yeah.
And but it's just proof that Heavenly Father knows our gifts, and sometimes we don't know our gifts, but He does. And so this is a perfect example of He saw that in me, and He knew what I could do, and so He just needed to nudge and nudge and nudge and nudge me until I put out that very first book. And then I thought I was done. I said, I did it, Heavenly Father, I did it. I'm done. Wipe that off. And that has not been the case. People have been brought to me, and I turned down a lot of offers to write books, but I know when I'm supposed to write a book, and this newest book, A Necessary Lie, is no exception to that. I feel like we were just put together, and I went in sort of hesitant, but and we'll talk a lot more about that as we go. All the books that I write have to do with hope. That is a theme that you will feel throughout every book that I write. I love to write stories, true stories, about people that rise up from circumstances that are so impossible and so difficult that you just think, how in the world did they do that? A real true rise from ashes into a situation and becoming someone who can make a difference in the world in their own way. And I've always believed, before I even was an author, I would read these kind of books. I loved these kind of stories because I feel like a story teaches a principle better than anything else because you feel it. You feel the principle as you read the story. And some of the most common emails I receive from people all over the world are for all of my books when they say, when I read this book, I just put my own details, I changed the story to my own details, my own struggles in my life, and it taught me that I can do, I can really do this. I can find light in a dark circumstance. I have the ability to do that. And so it's motivational, it's encouraging. The emotions in these stories are all over the board. You will feel tragedy, you'll feel sadness, you'll feel incredibly proud of these people, you have empathy for them. It's the whole range of emotions. The most common thing that I'm told for my books is, I cried when I read your book. And my response is always the same, and I say, I cried when I wrote it. Mm-hmm. So to me, that is a really great compliment, because what it means is that I was able to transfer onto the pages as I wrote truly the emotions and the feelings behind these stories, and that the reader has now felt that. And so I'm just like, okay, I did it. A really great compliment as well for me is when I'm writing these stories, I send them chapter by chapter to the people whose stories I write. And we talk about the different chapters as we go before we do a big final edit. And when they call me or email me back after I've sent a chapter and say, it's their story, and they'll say, I cried when I read that. It brought it all back. All those emotions came back, and I just think, oh my gosh, I nailed it then. If I can make the person cry whose story it is, then wow, I captured it. So I feel, I call it a calling. I feel like this is my calling. And what I do is I try to inspire and bring a little bit of light into a world that feels very dark. And the circumstances in all of the books are very, very different. The stories are very different. Finding Hope in the Journey is very personal about me and my own life and struggles. Servie's Song is my second book. That is about a woman in Zimbabwe who becomes a widow, and so she has 6 children living in poverty, and she knows that those children need to be educated to be able to get themselves out of poverty. And so it's her adventure of coming to the United States, leaving her children with relatives to send money back, and then eventually bringing the family together. It's a tragic story, but so uplifting in her ability to do that. The Secret Keepers is my third book about a woman who actually lives here in Utah. And she was abused so horrifically as a child that her beautiful, healthy mind broke and split into various parts, which we call dissociative identity disorder, also known as multiple personality disorder. It's the story of her rise up from an incredibly horrible childhood, which in the book I don't go into the details that I know because nobody else wants to know that. But you know what I'm talking about when I talk about it. I just have to set the story up. Really, the majority of the book is about her rise from that and her ability to become this beautiful mother and become this beautiful grandmother and just embrace her life with these parts. Because just because the trauma ends doesn't mean the parts go away. It's a life sentence. Those parts are with you forever. So it's interesting and it's fascinating to learn about that. My fourth book is Bridge of Miracles, about a man in Kenya who grew up barefoot, didn't own shoes until he was 16 years old, living in one of the greatest areas of poverty in Nairobi, Kenya. It's his story of finding the church, meeting the missionaries, saying, I want to be like that, I want to get an education, and the impossible events in his life that we see unfold through so many miracles as he comes to the United States to get an education. Eventually, he goes back to run for president of Kenya, and that doesn't happen because there was a hit put on his family, and so for security reasons, he had to pull out of the race. But what an incredible man. He's also the first African, native African to sing with the Mormon Tabernacle Choir. He sang with them for 12 years. So if you remember way back in the day, as the cameras pan the Tabernacle Choir, there's one black face in a sea of white. That was him. He's an incredibly beautiful human being. And all of these people whose stories I write, I am friends for life with them because we get so personal in my routine and interviews of extracting those stories from them. And it was interesting with him. He was the first man I wrote about, right? And it was interesting because with the others, we would talk and we would cry, and he would tell me the story like a news article, right? This miracle that happens, and these things, and these roadblocks in his life, and these disappointments, and death, and all of these events that happened to him over in Kenya. And he would tell me the story, and I would have to stop him and say, okay, you need to tell me how you felt. Like, what were you thinking? What were you feeling? What did that look like? And so he got used to me, like really, really digging deep. And so, but as a result, that's the things that I want to put into these stories. I don't want it to read like Time magazine. That's not what I want to do. This North Korea book, A Necessary Lie, is like that. There are plenty of news articles about North Korea, and there are plenty of books out there about North Korea. I've read a number of them in all of my preparation for that. This is a picture of the Kims, and here in the United States, he goes by Jake, she goes by Vivian, just because people have a hard time pronouncing their names, which I don't even know their North Korean names. I don't even want to know those for security reasons, right? They changed those in South Korea so that they could not be tracked. And so it's Do-hyun and it's Jeon. And so you can see how people be like, right? And so they just have kind of picked these American names that they love. And so it's Jake and Vivian. But in the book, it's Do-hyun and Jeon, because those are their South Korean names. When I first met them, they said to me, I sat down, I remember the very first interview, I sat down and with them, I knew the basics of the story, kind of a high outline. And I sat down with them and they said to me, it's really a love story. And I remember thinking, okay, yeah, whatever, you two love each other. But, right? But I knew it was an escape from North Korea, right? I mean, that is adventure and miracles and just crazy, unexpected events that come up. And how did you do that? And so I was really looking for that. And they kept saying, this is a love story. And so is there anyone here who's read it? Roxanne, have you read it, the whole thing?
Not the whole, most of it.
I'm just going to ask, is this the same couple that they did just like a short article in LDS Living?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And they had, I don't even know if this picture is one of them that came from that article.
Okay.
It truly is a love story, but it's interwoven with so many other things, right? But at the end of the book, you will agree with them. This is our love story. And so it's just an incredible thing. But it took me a while to really understand that, to go through the process. Whenever I take on a project of writing someone's story, I have to find my why. And it's different for each book that I take. And at that very first interview that I did in their home, where we spent several hours together, and I just tape recorded the whole thing, I was, really prayerful about, please help me find my why. And the reason that I need to have that why is because I am about to devote 1 or 2 years, depending on the book, completely to this. Just like my whole soul goes into this story of research, of learning, of interviews, countless interviews. And then when I feel in my heart that I'm ready to start writing, I have to get to a certain point that it's almost like a switch goes off and I know that I'm ready to begin. But I won't begin writing until I get there, because I have to feel the whole story, and then I can outline and begin to write. And so for me, I need that why, because it's so many hours that I could be hanging out with my husband, and I could be traveling, and I could be going to lunch with friends, and I could be, and in addition to the job that I already work full-time for, I do bookkeeping. So I have to find my why to make it worth that effort that I'm about to put in. And I remember sitting in their living room, and we were just about to begin the interview process and to really start to dig, and so that I could learn their story. And these two little boys kept coming in, and they would just jump all over their mom and dad, and wrestle with them and giggle and laugh. And they would say to them, go play with your toys. And they continued to do that over and over. And it just hit me. All of a sudden, I knew they are my why. Those two little boys are my why. This story needs to be told so that they understand what happened to mom and dad. And how did mom and dad get here? And what is their heritage back in North Korea? And I just, I get goosebumps even now just saying that, because I felt so, the mantle on my shoulders was for those two children to tell it right, and to tell it so that they could be proud of their parents and be proud of their heritage, but also understand fully the sacrifice that was made for them to have a life in the United States.
Where do they live?
Here in Lehigh.
In Lehigh?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that was my why, and as soon as I feel that, I'm ready to go. It gives me this whole this energy, sort of, that I can do this. I can do this, because I think of that even in the hard times when I'm really struggling in writing a book. I just go back to my why. Why am I doing this? Well, it's my calling, and I'm doing it for those two boys. I can do this. I can do this. I can battle through. So this is them with their two little boys. So in beginning this book, it was overwhelming. I didn't want to take the project on, but I felt I look for kind of a spiritual manifestation that I am supposed to write this book. And when I got that, I thought, I didn't want that. I didn't want to do this, because North Korea, right? It's this great big question mark. You know, we don't know a lot about North Korea. I'll share with you what I knew, and what I think many people in the population know, but there's so much more that I learned from the story. What we know about North Korea, because we just don't even talk about them that much, is here it is, this little, right, this little, in red, this little country, kind of, it butts right up here to South Korea. So I knew it was like over there, and I knew it was north of South Korea. I knew it was close to China over here. There's a river that runs right along the border here between China and North Korea, and that becomes evident in the book. You learn about that river, the Yalu River. I knew that they didn't like Japan. Japan is over here. They hate the Japanese. Basically,
The North Koreans?
Yes. Yeah. They hate everybody. They hate
Yeah.
the Chinese. They hate the Japanese, but they really hate the Japanese. China is just a big mystery over there. They really hate the South Koreans too.
Yeah.
They just hate everybody. But probably the number one enemy on their list is probably us.
Americans.
Yeah, they really, really hate the Americans.
Well, what they do to their kid, the students,
Yeah,
the
So they're taught
swords.
since they're young, they dress them up, they batter
Yeah.
things and.
Oh, yeah.
That are Americans,
Yeah.
they flag and they burn, you know.
right. And I'll get more into that. So, but this is kind of the general, I think, as a population of the United States, this is kind of generally what we know about North Korea. We know that it is dark. North Korea is dark at night. There are no lights, except for Pyongyang, which is the capital of North Korea. You can see a light on the satellite views only in Pyongyang. The rest of the entire country is dark. So at this time of our lives in 2024, they still read by candlelight at night in their homes. There is no electricity except in the capital. In the capital
They
there
don't
is
have electricity in their homes?
no. Only the upper class do. And in Pyongyang, where all of the Kim dynasty and that whole area up there, they
It's not
live.
like Hunger Games.
They,
It literally is Hunger Games.
yeah, it kind of feels like that, doesn't it? So they don't have electricity, or they have little shots of it. If depending on where they live, it's incredibly poor. When Do-hyun in the book, he lives over on the border, this border of North Korea that kind of butts up across. He can see across the river into China, and he would see lights over there at night, and he would think, I wonder why there's lights over there and not here. But he just didn't think much about it, because they are truly programmed, as we'll get into that. So what we know about North Korea, we know it's over there by China and Russia and Japan. We know that it's dark at night. One of my very best friends is a pilot, and he tells me that when they take off out of Seoul, South Korea, they know it's generally on international flights, the pilots take turns sleeping in the back room for their shift of flying. And he said, but when we're in South Korea and we take off out of Seoul, we have to make a turn to get out of that, to turn and then go wherever that plane is going to go. And he said, it's all hands on deck. All 4 pilots will be in the cockpit at that time, because you cannot fly into North Korea. They will shoot you down. So you cross, and he can see this. He says, you see it plain as day. You see lights everywhere in the airplane, and then you begin to turn that plane, and everybody is watching the border. and the instruments. Like, we cannot make a mistake. And so they turn that plane before they cross into that darkness. That's what we know about North Korea. What we also know about North Korea is that it's a family-run country. So it was Kim Il-sung from 1948 to 1994. He dies, so this is grandpa, this is father, Kim Jong-il. He dies in 2011. And then his son, the chubby-cheeked Kim Jong-un, who we all talk about, right? The kind of the crazy Kim Jong-un, in 2011, and he currently is still leading that. We also know, what we know in general is that their military is fierce. They are one of the largest militaries in the world, and they are required there to do 10 years of military service. All young men are required to do that after high school. That's huge, 10 years, right? They are fierce, very intimidating, because they will do anything for him. Anything. What else do we know? Anything else that I missed on what you know, kind of in general?
Well, I
Is that-
remember there was one of the morning shows. This Asian woman, I think she was South Korean. She was on Good Morning America or something, and she dressed up and got in with a camera. And I saw they showed filming, and they showed the marching of the
Right.
people in the streets and stuff. And she says, "This is very dangerous what I'm doing." And she did get back out just fine and showed, but she was dressed like in raggedy looking clothes.
Right.
She had to, makeup, straggly, hair in a ponytail or
Yeah.
whatnot. Nothing. Those people have nothing.
They have nothing. Right, and that becomes really evident in the book.
Yeah.
When I was there, they had big, huge speakers that had propaganda just going 24/7, and we had to be very careful crossing in and out, and where President Trump went.
The DMZ.
Right. So you entered in from where?
From Seoul, we were.
From South Korea. You
Yes.
came in. Yeah. Did you go to Pyongyang, the capital?
No, we didn't go.
You just were in that
Yeah.
very southern
DMZ.
area. Yeah. Yeah, anybody that comes in, they put on a show for you. Right, it's all fake. So they actually recruit, beautiful women from throughout the country and dress them up nice, and we'll put them in certain areas so that you can see that as visitors. So it's all very staged. Anybody that enters that country on any kind of a tour, you're not seeing the real
And
thing.
they'll catch a lot of things. I've seen a lot of documentaries, and
Yeah.
the hospitals are pathetic, and
Oh, yeah.
they'll have one little part of the hospital that looks like it's functioning well, but then the rest, at nighttime, and
Right.
no lights, and just the pretense.
Yeah. Some of the things that I learned, this book took me 2 years to completion, just because I needed to feel really ready to write this emotionally, as well as to understand North Korea a little bit better. I never claimed to be an expert in North Korean politics or history or anything like that. I would never take that title upon myself. I learned what I could to validate what the Kims were telling me, and it always matched right up, because they left with the clothes on their back. There are no photos of them, right? They just had to escape with their lives. But some of the things that I learned about North Korea that become evident as I tell the story are things like the childhood, like Roxanne, you had mentioned. In school, they teach those children that the Americans are these evil people who abuse and murder children for fun. And they do exercises at kind of a PE type class where they call it, killing the American bastard is what they say. And they teach them a song about Yankees, kill the Yankees. And the children take turns running and stabbing the scarecrow that says, American bastard at the top of it. And they stab with these machetes. They stab the scarecrow, which represents an American. And then the last student in the class goes up, stabs it again, and lights it on fire. And they all dance around and cheer that they have eliminated this American. And so Jong, the woman who escaped, she told me the other day that she still has nightmares about Americans.
Oh, the fireworks and all would have triggered a lot.
Yeah, she can't.
Yeah.
Yeah, she can't do the fireworks. She can't be around gun sounds. And I'll talk about that in a second. But just in general, I mean, she knows, right? She's living here. She loves it here. She feels so blessed to be here. But she still has nightmares about Americans because it is so deeply ingrained in them from the time that they are 5 years old going to school.
So they didn't have any electricity, is that what you're saying?
No. There was no
So
electricity
they
for
get to
either
South
of them.
Korea and there's electricity, and
Yeah.
lights, and
Yeah.
it's gotta be
Yeah,
quite the shocker.
right. 1 out of every 3 people is a spy for the Kim dynasty government officials. 1 out of every 3. That means your family is watching you, your neighbors are watching you. You take one wrong step, you say one slanderous thing about the country or the leaders, and they will haul you away. They will come in the middle of the night and just take you.
So how would she know if her husband was one or not? Yeah, I mean, how would you know?
Yeah, you just assume that everyone is okay unless you hear otherwise.
No, are they members of the church? Is that what I'm?
They are now,
Huh.
yes. There in North Korea, religion is forbidden, and you can be executed if you're caught with a Bible or practicing anything. And there's a story of that in there that they witness. Because Kim Jong-un and his father and his grandfather before him, essentially they present themselves to the people in North Korea as a god. They present themselves as a god. They believe that they are miraculous. And there are stories in their history books about these leaders. They can create and make things fly. They can, they believe that they can make pine cones fly. They believe that they have magical powers. They believe that they control the weather. They believe that a full rainbow was in the sky at the birth of each one. So they grow up believing that they have some sort of a deity, kind of this power that's above anybody else, and they worship that. You are required to have portraits on the wall of these 3 people on your wall, and they have to be exactly centered on a wall. They can't be off center or you'll get hauled away, because that's disrespect. That's being disloyal. They have to be perfectly centered, and they have to be cleaned each day with a special white cloth that the government gives you. So they will come in at any time. The security will come in, the police will come in randomly throughout the day or the night. There are night raids in every home, counting people. Where are you? Who are you? Just inspecting things to make sure nothing is wrong. And they will inspect the dust on those portraits.
Wow.
So there better not be dust, or that's disloyal. And you'll go to prison for some time. You'll be hauled away for that. There are executions of people because the people there are starving to death. They will steal. A father will become so desperate because his wife, in the book, there's a story of a true story of a husband who was working on a farm area. He snuck out at night because his wife was so starved and his family was so starved that she didn't have milk to feed her new baby. And so he killed a cow. He cut off a cow leg, brought it home secretly in the middle of the night, and began to prepare it. Well, 1 out of 3 people are watching you, right? Someone smelled the beef, someone saw it, someone heard about it, and so he was brought to a public execution. There are public executions weekly. And school children, when there is a public execution, there is an announcement that is made, and the teachers take those school children to the execution site and they witness it. There are generally 9 shots, 3 in the legs, and then they move up 3 in the torso and 3 in the head.
Oh, I read it backwards. I thought it was head first, then torso, then knees.
I think I'm
Maximize the torture.
Yeah, that gross. It was so gross.
Yeah.
Just reading it, I was like,
Yeah, and the fact that the children are forced to witness that.
That's how they keep people in line.
That's
Oh,
how they
absolutely.
keep it. Yeah,
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Especially a young child, and the indoctrination. You
right,
can't get in line, or this is you.
right, yeah.
They know better.
And so they are told from the time that they are young that there is nothing to envy. We are the greatest nation in the world. And they believe that. The people there believe that. They believe they are the greatest nation in the world because they have been told that for so much of their lives. They are told that the South Koreans are starving to death, and there are clothing drives that are done where once a year the children bring what little they have, right, that might be left over, something that's a little bit small for them. They bring from their closets, and they gather it all up, and the teachers give it to the government. Who knows what the government does with it, because they don't send it to South Korea. But they believe that the South Koreans are poor, and they are starving to death in the streets, and that the Americans are abusing the children there. So they feel for them. They feel for the South Koreans, but at the same time they hate them because they believe that they invaded North Korea, which is not true. The North Koreans started all that. So there's just this whole, the propaganda is deep. It's deep. It's far-reaching with these people. So you might say to yourself, why don't they just do an uprising, right? Why don't they well, they don't know.
They don't know.
They don't know. There is no internet there.
No
This
communication.
is what
There's
communism
no
is.
communication, right? The newspaper is put out by the government. The radio, there's one radio station, there's one television station. It is a propaganda station put out by the government. And they do patriotic songs, they do all kinds of loyalty. Look at Kim Jong-un, this is what he's done for us. And the people just worship, they just worship that. Marching bands, the military will come in and march the streets. And then you see executions for anyone
So
who...
there are some that have electricity that,
If you are upper class, you can get some electricity. But generally in Pyongyang, the electricity is there because many of the upper class will live there. And there are statues. There are statues that are lit all the time by these big, huge spotlights. And the statues are of these three men, the Kim family. And people go and they worship the statues. When you are married in North Korea, you were required to go give your thanks to them for the honor of having been married. And so you are required to go in your wedding outfit to the statues, travel to the city, and bow down to the statues in gratitude for the marriage.
I was just gonna say the 13 colonies had a lot of division too before our revolution, but Mary Catherine Goddard had her own printing press from her father, and she could have been hung as a traitor, but because she went ahead and printed the Bill of Rights and made the Constitution, that just changed the world because it unified all 13 colonies. But that when you control everything,
Yeah.
there's no chance.
Yeah, right. The communication is cut off. So that's the answer to why you'll think to yourself, why don't they just leave? Well, they can't.
they can't.
They
Can't
can't.
even think for themselves.
And they can't, they
Yeah.
don't even know that they should just leave. They don't even know that. So how do the people know that do?
It
Yes.
seems like I've heard that people that do try to get out, it's because they're starving so much.
Yeah.
They just,
Yeah, a lot of them go to China and they have a big sex trafficking. I mean, they go into servitude and have a lot of prostitution because
Right.
that's their only hope is
Right.
to be taken care of by someone.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah, a farmer will say, I need a wife, and he'll take a Korean wife. So it's very risky. It's a 50% fatality rate to escape. 50%, it's a 50% chance you will not make it. You'll either be seen by one of the military guards and shot on sight, or you just won't make it, or you'll be caught in China if they don't want you in China, if they don't like what you're doing or what you say or anything. Depending on who catches you in China, they immediately send you back to North Korea. That's a death sentence because now you're an escapee. And they will punish you, not just you, but your family.
Do they feed the military? Do they get good food?
Not adequately, no. Not adequately.
So this Kim fellow.
Kim Jong-un, the newest... Oh, or do you mean...
The couple?
Yes.
Was he in the military?
No. He was not in the military. He was thrown out. He tried to be in the military, but he was thrown out because his father wrote a letter to the government and about human rights.
Uh-oh.
That was a mark on the family. His father was an avid reader, and he had figured out that this was not right over there. And he took the position that I'm going to do this. I need to do this. And he hand wrote a letter and traveled up to Pyongyang and walked up to a government building and handed the letter and said, this needs to go to leadership. And so he was named as a traitor. And when there's a traitor, your entire family is punished for life. And so he had now brought his family down to the lowest rung on that because of that. They understood why he did that. They respected him for that, but they all suffered for that. Through blackmail channels, there are some South Korean literature and videos, like movies and American movies, that have crossed over the border, and some people can get their hands on them. And they see this other life, right? All of a sudden they see life on the streets, and they're eating food, and they have these apartments with these appliances that they don't even know what they are. And they just think, how is this, right? And so it puts this seed, right, into their brain. So Do-hyun, he looks at that. He in his work, he works and sells precious metals, sort of on the side. So it's risky, but he does that, and he sells them to China. So he has this network going back and forth into China, and he has the ability to go into a home of the man that he works for, and the man is so successful that he is protected from police. So if there are no cell phones in South Korea, but in North Korea, but if you have one, they can track you. The military police have trackers that they carry with them. So if you make a phone call anywhere within the city, they'll be at your door in minutes. They left this man alone. So somehow he was protected. And in that home, Do-hyun watched some South Korean movies. And it just began, between that and growing up as a boy on the border and seeing the lights over there, and some other things that are unveiled in the story, he began to see for himself, there is another life outside these borders. And he had hoped and hoped and hoped that the Kim dynasty would end with Kim Il-sung, the second, Kim Jong-il.
Yeah.
And when it was named that Kim Jong-un was going to be coming in, he just said, that's it. That's it. This is never going to end. He was sort of futuristic like his father in thinking, and he knew that there was a better life out there. At that time, he had been married for 2 years, and he said to himself, I can't raise my children in North Korea. And so he planned for the escape. This is the escape route that they took. It's
They
a
have
common...
children at the time?
No. Okay, so it's just the two of them.
Just two of them married for 2 years. So this is the escape route that they took. Now you might say to yourself, why do they not just escape over the border?
It's probably guarded.
So heavily guarded, impossible. There would be...
Chinese get
Like
money
our
too.
border.
I think the Chinese get paid
Yeah,
to return them.
yeah. There would be too many people to bribe, and it's very, very rare that you get someone that crosses the border here successfully into South Korea, and if they do, they are a military guard that has said to themselves, "I'm out." Right? But any citizen, other normal citizen of North Korea, is not going to be successful. So what do you have to do? You have to cross the river into China, and you go down through China into Laos, and you cross in the jungles of Laos, you cross on foot, and you make it into Thailand, and you get yourself arrested. Because Thailand has a policy that if you're a North Korean and you are arrested there, they throw you in jail, they call the South Koreans, and the South Koreans come over and they put you in detention centers, they check to make sure you're not a spy. It's several months of time in the detention and the jails before they will put you on a plane and send you back to South Korea, where you will do another stint in a place where they try to break down the propaganda that you've been taught all of your life. And they teach you what North Korea really is. And they learn what the history really is, and they begin to understand. And imagine the tragic, what a tragic feeling that must be to learn that everything you've been told is a lie. They
That's like
teach.
if we found out that Heavenly Father and Jesus lose the war and that we're gonna be forever
Yeah.
in Satan's power.
Right, right. So they are taught in South Korea when they entered. It's called Hanawan, and it's a required. Is it 3 or is it 5 months? I haven't read my own book in a little bit.
Hey, is the same language?
Yes, with different slang terms and a different accent. So they are known. The North Koreans are known walking the streets by a couple of different ways. They are, first of all, they are shorter in stature and
Because they
thinner
don't get nutrition.
because they've been malnourished their entire life. So they don't grow as they should. So they spot them. The South Koreans can spot them. And also, their language is a little bit different. They have different accents. You know, slang terms that we all use, they don't understand each other. They have to learn those slang terms. So there are South Koreans, and there are programs there that are very helpful and kind, and they offer a lot of service to these North Koreans as refugees. And then there is prejudice, right? There's also, you know, people that don't like them entering their country. So they go through
Does
a
it
real
happen often?
adjustment.
North Koreans getting out?
It used to, but now I think they're down to only 100. What did they say
It
at
was
that?
pretty low. I
It
mean,
was
it went
low.
from a big number for gradually
Thousands,
each year,
thousands.
yeah.
Every year it's less and less and less.
Yeah.
Kim Jong-un has really, really beefed up the military.
Yeah.
Yeah, along the borders. It is becoming very difficult and so dangerous to cross that brokers who you pay to help you cross, that you pay them thousands of dollars to get you across. It's so dangerous that many of them won't even do it anymore. So it's very, very difficult for these people to leave. You almost have to know somebody who can get the money, who can find a broker that'll do it. And the risk in finding a broker too is that someone will outbid that broker maybe in China, right? You've paid thousands of dollars to get yourself into China, and now that broker is paid a higher wage by someone in China that wants to put you in a sex ring. And all of a sudden, you're headed back to North Korea, or you're now a slave in China. So it's just an incredibly dangerous situation.
Do they try to go on boats, like just some logs or something out in the water?
There's military all along the river.
I'm talking about the ocean around North and South Korea.
I have never heard of that. I don't know if they ever find people. This is a pretty common route here.
It's a long way to travel.
3,000 miles, can you imagine? Whereas the border here is 2. But it's impossible. Cannot be done.
I also understand that since China had the one-child policy, and they don't have girls now, that they smuggle the North Korean,
Right.
they get the North Korean girls.
Right, they'll get the North Korean girls
And
and
they're slaves to their
force them
husbands,
to
yeah.
be the wife to this man because he can't find a woman in China. Yeah.
Well, Steve Smoot helped change that so that it's not a one-child policy anymore, because he showed them the demographics, the
Yeah.
winter demographics that are gonna
Right.
implode on their own society.
Right. Now China is begging women to have more children because they found themselves, they're looking futuristic and they're saying, we're in trouble. Right?
Well, the men are going
in the
homosexual
military.
too.
Yeah, so it's just what an incredibly dangerous, I mean, anybody that can do this and stay alive throughout it, it's just an amazing.
So when
Journey.
they're arrested, did they separate the husband and wife? You know, in this travel to get back to South Korea?
Okay, so they did not go together.
Oh,
Couples almost never succeed if they go together as a couple.
oh.
So
What's that?
one at a time, because there's emotions. There's emotion, right? You got to be everything for me when you cross. It's got to be, you are worried about yourself, and that is it. You just have to stay alive and do what it takes to stay alive. So Do-hyun is the first one that he had in his idea. He had this futuristic thought. He had looked, he had read, he had found some newspapers that were smuggled in, and he had read about South Koreans having a program to help the North Koreans succeed in their new world in South Korea. And so he didn't always tell his wife about all of this. He told her a little bit about some of his father's thoughts, and she loved him and loved his father and appreciated that, but didn't ever know how far he had gone in his thoughts. And so the title of the book, A Necessary Lie, is demonstrative of the lie that he told his wife, which was, I'm going on a business trip for 2 weeks. And you may not be able to reach me because I'm going to be in the forest at a lumber yard doing some trading, and I may not have, the ability to call you from there. So don't worry about me, but I'll be gone for 2 weeks. And so the first chapter 1 in the book is the train station, where he's standing on the platform talking to her and assuring her that he will just be gone for 2 weeks. And they're madly in love, and he is having to keep everything inside. But he has this whole plan. There's a broker that's been hired. He knows where he's headed, and he knows he may not survive. But why can he not tell her?
So she won't be responsible.
Yeah.
Plausible deniability.
Right. If she even has a facial expression when people ask her about her husband, someone will recognize that and will turn her in. She cannot show a glimmer of, or speak, or accidentally say anything about that her husband has escaped. She can't know. And so it's a necessary lie.
Did he plan on getting her out?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. He'd already paid for a broker for her?
No.
Oh, just for him?
Just for him. It's thousands of dollars. It's way more money. He had a friend who was in the military for 10 years, his very best friend, who, when he was in the military, his mother escaped to China because of food, because of the starvation. And once she got over there, she said, I'm not going back, right? I'm going to try to maybe get my family. And so Duyan knew that. And he took a risk, a huge risk. At some point, he said to his friend, wouldn't you ever like to go see your mother? That's a huge risk just to say that, right? But he took the chance. And at first his friend said, absolutely not. Why would I do that? That would be so disloyal to our country, and I just fought for our country, and But he said, okay, well, just, if you ever change your mind, come back and let's talk about it. Huge risk to say that, but his friend didn't say anything, but he began to see the starvation, stepping over dead bodies in the streets in North Korea of people and children starving. And he had not been fed well in the military either, and he had had some comrades die of starvation in the military. So, he began to sort of see a little bit, and then one day he called Do-hyun on the house phone and said, what would that take, And so at that point, they hired a broker to get word back to his mother. She put up the money for both of those boys to cross together. She was so grateful for Do-hyun to even mention it, to make it possible, that she put up the money, which was thousands of dollars, so that they could cross with a broker. And they did so. So he doesn't say anything. It's an escape for freedom. He understood that it was freedom that he was going to, as well as the future of his family. He wanted to raise his children anywhere but North Korea. But it's also an escape for love, because when she went, she believed that North Korea was the greatest nation on earth. But she went because she loved him. So there's this incredible conversation that they have at the top of the mountain when you talk to a broker on the cell phone. The cell phone is smuggled in from China because they don't have cell phones. Citizens there don't have them.
They have regular phones?
They have a regular house phone. Yeah, that's monitored by everybody. So the cell phones are smuggled in from China, but to escape the police from understanding, catching your signal, you have to hike to the top of a mountain where you're in the Chinese airspace. So you hike to the top of the mountain, and then you have 5 minutes and then you have to hang up because they'll trace you if it's longer than 5 minutes. So it's just this really sketchy thing, and essentially he finds a broker that calls her and says, after she's been waiting, she hasn't seen or heard from Do-hyun in 8 months. She has never given up hope. She loves him so much. She says he would never, her family is saying, he found another woman. And she's saying, no, I know him, And her father is saying he probably got into some trouble and was killed, and she just says, until I hear that, until I absolutely know, I will never give up on him. And one day she gets a phone call on the house phone that says, Duyan is in Pyongyang. Will you meet him? And she says, who is this? Click, right? She gets a series of phone calls, and finally, on a final phone call, she hears that same strange man's voice say to her, meet me in this, it's like a market, like a big open air market. Meet me in the market, what will you be wearing? And she says, I'll be wearing a gray coat and glasses. And then click, right? She has to arrange visas to travel because you have to get authority from the government to do any travel in North Korea so that they can track you, right? It's all about tracking. It's all about, never letting go of you. So she gets all the necessary, creates a lie that she needs to travel for work to this city, and she goes there and stands in the market and just stands there. It's now an hour and a half. She's standing there in a gray coat with glasses. There's people milling all over the place, right? And she stands there. And all of a sudden, it's been an hour and a half now. She doesn't want to leave because she believes, if I go home now, I will never know about my husband ever. And this could be a trick. This could be a government spy. And they could be hauling me off to a concentration camp. Or it may be the slim chance that I'll know what happens to my husband. So she waits and waits and waits, and it's an hour and a half now. And a man brushes by her in drabby clothes and a baseball cap, and all she hears in her ear is, follow me. Now, how many of us would follow a strange man in North Korea?
Of course, she knew someone was going to make contact.
Yes,
So.
she hoped, yes.
But she still didn't know that it would be a good contact.
Exactly.
A good
That's true.
Why do you think it was an hour and a half before he approached her?
So he could observe what was going on around.
Exactly. He needed to make sure that she wasn't going to turn him in.
Yeah.
Right? Everybody's out to catch everybody. I mean, it's just awful. It's just awful. So he takes her through the crowd, down through an area, and into an apartment building. And an abandoned apartment building. And she follows him the whole way there. And the whole time, he's looking, is she being followed? And she's just trying to keep track of him as he's hustling through there. And she gets into the apartment building, and he hands her a phone number and says, this is your husband's phone number. And she can see that it is not the numbers for any North Korea phone number. And so she just thinks he's in China. Maybe he's in China, right, doing business or something. And he says, do you want to speak to your husband? And she says, yes. And she says, where is he? And he says, South Korea. And she about dies because the South Koreans are enemies. And so she thinks to herself, he's in enemy territory, right? But she loves him enough to say, I want to speak with him. And so he says, follow me. And they go on like a 6-mile journey into the mountains. They have to hike to the top of this mountain. And she can have a phone call. So at 5-minute phone call with him. And that's the first time they've spoken in almost a year that they speak together. And he says, will you come be with me? And she says, yes, I'll do anything. And so he develops a plan to hire this broker. And there are a lot of glitches in the plan, but as you read through the story, she eventually does her own escape down through the jungles of Laos and through the buses and crossing the frozen river. She crosses in the winter because it's a little bit easier. And she walks across the Yalu River in the winter, which is a terribly frightening thing. And whereas he went in a boat, a little fisher boat came over and got him from China and then brought him across. It's terrifying because it's in the middle of the night. You don't want to moon, right? You don't want to moon that night because you don't want to be seen. You're just racing through the darkness to not be seen by the military, by the Chinese military or the North Korean military. So eventually she finds her way.
Thailand too. I have a friend that escaped from Laos when the communists invaded.
Yeah.
And he threw himself into the Yangtze River, but they would have shot him from both sides.
Oh, yeah.
Because they don't know.
Right,
anymore.
right. You're just an escapee, and we don't want you here, and so they just shoot on sight.
Does North
Yeah.
Korea have restrictions or controls on their children, on having children there, or you could just have as many as you want, or?
Not that I know of. That was never mentioned, and I've never read that. Yeah,
But yeah, there's no food, so they probably didn't want to have a big family.
Yeah.
How do you feed them?
They probably couldn't get pregnant if you're hungry.
Well, and their houses are, like this big right here. And they're all sleeping together and they're eating and they're heating their homes with coal. A coal briquette will heat your home. And so they just kind of stand around that. And it's such primitive living. So primitive. They don't even always have water. They get water once every week, or is it week or 2 weeks that it will come into the building. And so they all have to share it. They all have to haul buckets and bring buckets back to their homes to use the water for the week. Yeah, but yet they believe that they are the greatest, richest country in the world. They really do believe that.
Wow.
If you haven't seen anything more than that, and you might, this is rich, okay.
Yeah,
Then you wouldn't know.
yeah, exactly. They don't know. They're cut off from everything. Unless they have an opportunity to view some movies or some magazines that have been smuggled into the country. And you sure don't want to be caught doing that.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
How come
Yeah.
his father wasn't executed?
He was.
Oh, he
he
wasn't?
was?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, he was executed. So they hauled him off to a concentration camp, and that was known as, it's the Gulag, and it was known as the harshest of all places to be. And he was given a sentence of 6 years. And is that right? Are you at that point in the book? It's either 6 or 8. I'll say 6. But they hauled him off there, and his family continued to want to know where he was, and how was he doing. And so they had a police officer friend that they'd known for a long time. And so Do-hyun had asked him, will you check on my father? Can you find out if he is okay, and let me know? And we just think about him all the time. And so he came, this policeman came back one day and went outside on a walk with Do-hyun and said, I found out about your father. It had been 2 years. And he said, he died. He died in prison, which means they executed him. And he said, Do-hyun said, I want his body back. I need to honor him by burying him. And he said, let me check on that. And he came back a week later and said, your father was sentenced to 6 years. He's only served 2 years. He needs to serve the other 4. So the body...
So his body has to stay there?
Yeah.
Oh.
Which, I'm sure what they do is they toss it into the mountains and the beasts eat the bodies. Yeah. So it's just, all of this that we've been talking about today is interwoven into the story. When I first sat down with the Kims, they said, we want to start this book maybe at our marriage, when we met and got married. That's where I think we'll start this book. And then we'll go through the escapes. And as I began to really understand their story and the more research that I did, I said to them, we are not going to start this book at your marriage, because we, the American people, are not going to understand why you would escape, why you would risk everything for not only yourself, but for your families that you leave behind. Because if anybody knows that you've escaped, that you've been disloyal to the Kim regime, your entire family can be hauled away and executed. So why would they escape? I said, we need to understand that, and so I need to start with you as children, and I will interweave the propaganda into your childhood.
No, that's very powerful.
Yeah. So that's how we learn. So by the time he's ready to escape, you're cheering him on, right? Even though he's leaving his wife behind, you're just like, you got to do this, and then you got to go back and you got to get her, right? So one of the interesting scenes in the book too, which happened, is when he gets to South Korea and he's done the Hanwon, he's done the training. By the way, at the Hanwon, they have to teach you how to use a computer. They've never seen a computer. They have to teach you how to use an ATM. There's no banks in North Korea. They stuff their money in their mattresses and their gardens and up in their roofs. There's no banks, right? They teach you these elementary things that the rest of the world understands, but they don't. They don't even know that they exist. But when he gets to Hanwon and he's finally presented with his South Korean passport, and he's ready to move into the city and find a job and, you know, try to make a living so that he can, and he works jobs just around the clock so that he can earn enough money to pay back his friend's mother for the broker fee and then pay for his wife. So he has a lot of money to make, and he can do it quickly if he works several jobs, which he does. But this is such an interesting scene because he receives his passport and he just cries at the sight of it. You know, like, I've got this passport to the world. I've been confined behind barbed wire fences for all of this time, and now I can travel anywhere in the world except where? Can never go back home.
Why would you?
Yeah, why would you? But you just can't.
You'll be killed.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So they
So
both.
their family is still there then?
Their family is still there. So his parents have died, and her father is still there, and he believes that they are in Canada. Because Canada is not enemy territory. Like, he wouldn't be able to handle knowing that his daughter was in the United States. He would think that she's being tortured. Right? So,
Another necessary lie.
yeah, another necessary lie for his well-being. And they finally had to tell him. And they send money back through brokers. They hire brokers and they send money back to him once a year to care for his medical needs and things so that he's doing well. But and there are some really touching scenes. I'm not going to tell you what they are because in the end of the book with conversations with him. But it's a full circle moment, and when I do a lot of publicity on social media and at different places, speaking events, I can generally make 3 promises in this book, and that it will change your life. I often say this will change your life if you read this book. And how can I say that? That's such a bold statement, right? But I would say that it'll change your life in 3 ways. Number 1, you will get an inside view of North Korea. You cannot find that in articles that you read. You can find glimpses of things, but here, this is their story. Chapter 1 is the train scene where he says goodbye, and off he goes, and he just weeps as the train pulls away. And chapter 2, they're in the classroom at school. The 2 of them are school children, and you begin to build that propaganda and what it's like to live in that country. You can get that from this book, where you can't get that from any other article that's written about North Korea. Number 2, it gives you incredible empathy for the people that are still there. Incredible respect for the sacrifice that the people, the refugees that have escaped from North Korea, you have a whole new respect and empathy for them in what they've been through. Just living in North Korea and what they went through to escape and cross the border. And number 3, you have a whole new perspective of your own blessings, a whole new gratitude. It's a different level of gratitude that you will feel for what you have here, because you see so much of what they do not have, and things that we just take for granted. My prayers have changed since I wrote this book. I am grateful for hot water, that when I turn a faucet, it just comes out of the shower head. I'm so grateful for that. And I tell Heavenly Father that on a regular basis that I am grateful for that, because they don't have that. They don't have that. They're washing from buckets of cold water. I'm grateful for the heat that heats my home in the winter. They don't have that. They're gathered around a cold briquette. There are just so many levels. Food. I look at food. You throw away some rotten food that goes bad in your refrigerator, and I think of North Korea when I do that. It's just changed me. It really has changed me. And if I presented it right in the book, it will change you too. You will read this story and you'll feel a whole new level of gratitude. So.
It kind of makes China look like a land of freedom.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah. When these 2 first crossed, both of them, they're 2 different stories, right? First you read about his escape, then you read about her escape. And for everybody that crosses, they get into China, and it's always in the middle of the night, right? And they get in and they walk through some of the streets, and their broker has them, and he puts them in a car. They duck down in the car. They travel to where the apartment is that they're going to drop them off for the night. before they get up and start the escape the next morning, and they see these lights, right? Restaurants and bars and people that are out dancing in the streets and music, and they have never seen anything like that. It's like an entirely different world that they never had any
They have
any
cars
idea.
in North Korea, or do they have to walk?
Only government
Oh,
government
okay.
officials, have cars. Everybody else rides the train, and the train is intermittent on electricity. So the train will run, and then it'll just stop in the middle of a field. It doesn't have enough power because the electricity is not going through the lines there. And so as passengers, you just wait for however long it's going to take, the next day or 4 hours or... So that's travel. Travel in North Korea is difficult. But they're used to it. This is just the way it is, right?
What a waste of time and effort and, for what? Just
Yeah.
barely survive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
From the other thing I didn't mention is the self-criticism sessions that are required starting at school age and at every job that you work. Once a week there are self-criticism sessions, and you have to stand up in front of the group. And you start this as 5-year-olds. You stand in front of the group and you say something that perhaps you have done that is not in it's not entirely positive. You could have been more loyal to the Kims. You could have been a better person. And so you'll make things up, right? Because you don't want to tell on yourself, so you make something up. Well, I could have done my math better, or I could have spent a little more time dusting the portraits or something like that. And then you hang your head in shame and you stand there. And then you go off, and then you stand there, and then someone else in the class is required to say something about you that they've observed that week. Well, so-and-so, was a minute late to school, or so-and-so took more than their portion of food. And so they watch you. So what does that do? Why are those self-criticism sessions required by the government? Why? Think about the big picture here.
Well, you get used to telling on yourself, so you'll tell on others.
Right,
Mm-hmm.
right. They're creating a
Subservient.
population where everybody watches everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they
All
train them
servants.
from the very young age of 5. And so it continues as adults. They have the same self-criticism sessions in the workplace, required every week. Yeah. So it's the mindset, right? And it takes some time for them to unravel all of that. Think of the difficulty just getting on a plane. In the book, they talk about as they descend into Seoul, South Korea, the lights. Seoul is a really advanced place. Technology-wise, they're ahead of us, right? We're behind them technology-wise. They are just way out there. Very advanced. The lights in the city, they can't even believe what they see from the airplane windows. They've never seen such lights. Think of the change for them and what they've had to go through to adapt to real life.
How long have they been here?
They've been here 10 years now. Yeah.
Do they get out of, is it hard for them to think, I can go to the store and not worry about it, or have they gotten past that?
They still think about it.
Oh, you would.
Yeah.
That's indoctrinated
Mhm.
So how
from,
would they decide to leave South Korea and come here?
Why did they?
they joined the church, right?
Yeah, they found the church because the missionaries there were teaching English, right? And they decided that they wanted to learn English. She did. She was the first one to learn English. And so she would go to their classes. They were free, right? And they were 2 sister missionaries that taught. And so she would go to the classes and she would learn the English. And at some point, she began to ask them more questions. And meanwhile, her husband is going to a Catholic church in South Korea. And because of a very beautiful spiritual experience he has almost dying on his escape, which you will love. And so they have he has begun to incorporate religion in his life for 2 reasons. For the first reason, he saw a family hauled away to be executed because they were singing hymns in secret in their home. So they were practicing.
Whole family to be executed?
Yes, hauled away to be executed. The whole family, taken out of the home in the middle of the night. He looked out his window and he saw that happening. And when he was in North Korea, he thought, who are these crazy people? They're probably just doing bad things, right? and singing songs that I've never heard. You're only allowed to sing patriotic songs that honor the loyalty of the Kims. So he sees that, and then when he gets into a situation where he is on his deathbed, in his escape, he immediately thinks to himself, okay, wait a minute. If religion is bad in North Korea, it must be good. Right? And so he thinks to himself, I don't know who this God thing is, but he was so desperate at that point that he just looked up into the sky and said his first prayer. That he would see his wife again and that he would live to see her. So from that point on, he knows that God is real, and a really beautiful, miraculous thing happens at that point in his life. So he lands in South Korea and says, I need to find God here. And so he sees a Catholic church and a cross and a really wonderful priest who helps him find a job. And that becomes a great thing. She happens to find these free English lessons, and then they teach her English. And at one point, she asks them more questions, and she decides to go to their church, and she loves it. She loves it. And so at some point, she says to her husband, what's this? We're going to these 2 different churches. This is crazy. And he says, but I love my church. And she says, but I love mine. And she says, you come with me. I want you to come with me one time. One time I want you to come. And if you don't like it, you can stay doing your Catholic church. And so he comes with her one Sunday. And the congregation just, these South Koreans just embraced them. And he had a spiritual manifestation there. And he said, this is where I'm going to stay. And eventually they met some people who knew people. They wanted to get a college degree. And they thought England was the best place to do that. And so they were kind of really talking seriously about going to England. And some leader in the church said to them, you don't want to go to England, you want to go to Provo, Utah. And I know some people who speak Korean that I can get you there. And so some plans were made and they agreed to fly. And think about that. Think about the courage to move to what was the greatest enemy territory in the world, which is the United States. Right? But they did. They came here and they trusted the people that promised them that they could have life, they could have a good education, that they could be set up with return missionaries that speak Korean, right? That could help them along the way, and that's what's happened. So it's been 10 years. They both have their degrees from UVU, and they are working. He works for the North Korean Human Rights Committee in Washington, D.C. He lives here, works remotely, travels there occasionally for meetings. And so he's responsible for tracking and researching and all of the escapees. And that's how we know the numbers. The numbers are declining every single year. It's becoming very difficult. She's an accountant and she works for a company and does their accounting. She got her degree in accounting. So
when they lived in North Korea, did they know what, did they know what a globe looked like? That North Korea is this little place, kind of like on The King and I, how Siam is this huge thing on this big map.
Yeah.
But it really isn't.
Right, yeah, the maps are distorted in their own history books.
Okay, so that's what they didn't know what their place looked like.
No, yeah, it's all distorted. It's all written by the government there. Everything is government published. And, in the history books, it talks about the magical powers of their leader, right? I mean, that's their history books. They don't learn the history of any other country. It's all about the Kims. Yeah. So this picture was just taken. Someone else, some friends of ours, just posted it on their social media. So I snagged the pictures and I just put it on there. They're missing a son there. He must have been playing in the other room, but and their story has been written. So I have the books here. They're $21.99, I think, on Amazon, but for $20, I can just take it for $20 here. It's available on Amazon, and my website is HeidiTucker.com, which it can also be ordered on there.
One more question.
Yeah.
So knowing the background, having the gospel, and knowing that the gospel needs to be taken to the entire world, it seems almost impossible to be taken to North Korea anytime in the future. What do you think, how do you think that plays in with these people that are leaving and finding the gospel? What do you think on that? What are your thoughts?
I think that plays into that, but I also have a hope that somehow, I don't know how, and so do these two. Their greatest desire is that those borders are opened.
Yeah.
But
But look at what a job that is. If they were to just open the borders, I mean, the people there,
They wouldn't know what to do.
they wouldn't know what to do. They would think they're
know
being invaded. You know, if you sent in the Red Cross, I mean, they would think they're being invaded by enemies. So I don't know how that's going
The
to work.
American
But
enemies.
yeah, that's a big question, right?
That's why the church needs to grow so much in South Korea.
Mm-hmm.
So at least it's people that kind of speak their language.
Right. Right. So.
What's hard is they probably learned how not to think. When we went to China, I got a daughter from China. When we went to go get her, we had to go to every pearl shop that there was. And you get tired of it, and you stay on the bus, and they come out. Please, you've got to come in, or we're in trouble. So you know the people there. And when you sit down at a restaurant, you feel like they're just swarming around you, make sure you have everything. But they're just like little kids. You see in their eyes that they're children. These adults are children. They don't know how to think and do for themselves.
Right. Right.
And it was such a strange thing because you can't. I mean, we've grown up just
Yeah.
thinking and exploring.
Yeah,
and they can't
that's
do that.
communism. I mean,
Yes.
these children in North Korea, they never raise their hand in class and ask a question. That is just doesn't exist. I said to him, well, didn't you ever have a question on what she was teaching? He said, no, you just don't. You just take what they say. You don't ever think. You don't analyze.
told,
You're
and
you're
that's-
taught not to do that. You're taught not to do that.
I would imagine that because his father took the path he did,
Mm-hmm.
that what a blessing to his son, even though he gave up his life.
He opened the door to this whole thing. Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, and the friend's mother that escaped. Those two combined gave him the strength.
Right. But truly, I mean, his hero is his father, and he lives his life now trying to honor his father. Look what I've done. Look what I've done for you. You saw this. You saw this life for me, and I'm here, and I'm going to now do this for my own children. Yeah, it's kind of a beautiful full circle.
Do they have jobs? What kind of things? do
You're
you get?
assigned to jobs in North Korea by the government, depending on your class, whether you're upper, middle, or lower class.
It's a caste system.
Mm-hmm. And so you go to the job that you are assigned by the government, and if you don't want to go to that job and you just decide to do something in the black market, which most people now do to survive, to sell something in the black market, you go to your employer and you bribe them to say that you were there. Many of these factories are empty. There are no workers because the country is just in shambles anyway, and so they're not even operating, but you're required to attend unless you bribe your factory leader. It's an entire system of dishonesty, just to survive. Yeah, and to stay unseen, and you just don't want to be noticed.
So, have they been able to communicate with any of their family members
Yes,
over in North Korea?
yes,
So
a
we're
few.
alive, we're in America. They think they're Canada, right? But
But
Right.
their families aren't punished communicating with them?
No, because they left. They've covered their tracks in North Korea so well.
So who do they think they're talking to?
Well, they know that they're talking to them, but they don't know where they are. They don't all know. Her father knows Canada, but he is tight-lipped. He is not going to say anything.
And they're not, like, calling off the families to
No.
punish them for leaving?
No. I
or
mean,
they
the
just
names-
don't care. They were lower economic and
They were lower economic, but I mean, it's a risk. It's a risk.
So who are they communicating through? Or do they still have the military friend that's?
It's all brokers.
Okay.
If they want to contact their family for a phone call or to send money, they have to pay thousands of dollars to a broker
wow.
to do
So
that.
they're North Koreans that just lay low and just
They're generally North Koreans who have escaped into South Korea, have lived a life there, and are willing to go back for a lot of money, are willing to cross the border and for money to do this for people.
How do they go then and not be noticed or live?
The brokers go.
The broker.
Oh, how do the brokers?
Yeah.
Oh, they're in and then they're out.
Oh.
Yeah, and they're paying off all kinds of people to, whoever they need to get in and out.
Which they're desperate for money.
Yeah, right,
So the man that he was working for in North Korea that was kind of off the radar,
right.
has he ever tried to leave? Like, I can't imagine that he's seeing these videos of South Korea and not having a desire to leave. himself.
He's living pretty
Like,
well.
He's really pampered.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So he sees no reason to leave. He doesn't know the full story. I mean, nobody does. Even with the South Korean videos and a couple of newspapers, you don't know the full extent until you leave that country and are truly educated. Yeah.
Now you say she can't handle fireworks. Can he do okay with them?
He's better with it than she is.
Does it still trigger him?
Yes. Yeah.
Why is that? Why?
Public execution.
Yeah.
In the town square, and you would hear them. She said you would hear gunshots all the time out on the playground. You're playing on the playground, you would hear gunshots, and you'd say, "Oh, someone was just executed." So, yeah, as well, and you see it too. I mean, they just gun you down if they don't like what you're doing. There's no trial. There's no attorneys, and yeah, it's very primitive life over there. So.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Do they
So-
still live in Provo?
So now
No,
they're in
Lehigh.
Lehigh.
Oh, they're in Lehigh.
Yeah, they're in Lehigh now. Yeah, so
Fairly close, or
um,
are they close to you?
they're closer to where we were the other.
Oh, they are?
They're not very far from there.
From your
Close to
house?
Saratoga.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's cool.
Hmm. But when I was writing the book, they were in Provo, and that's where we did all the interviews. They've just recently moved out here.
Is their English pretty good?
Hmm. Much better now than 2 years ago when I started.
Yeah.
Interviews were interesting. We always did it with a laptop because they could type in something. They're trying to explain to me and they couldn't find the word, and they would type something and turn the screen over, so I could see the word in English.
Were there boys born here?
Yes.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
So the government, did they give them asylum when they came here to BYU?
So right now they have green cards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
They got
So they're
passports in
still
South
considered
Korea.
And they've got
South Korean
passports. Mm-hmm.
Citizens.
Mm-hmm.
But they have children here now, though,
Right.
so that gives them a lot of protection.
Yeah.
So.
Right.
Until
And the
Until-
names have been
until they can
changed.
get,
Yeah.
they can become citizens.
Right.
7 years, is it?
I think they've been here 10 years.
10 years, so aren't they qualified now?
Yeah, I believe they're working towards citizenship.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they've changed their names, so their children would have a new name, like the name that their parents have taken on?
Yes.
Okay.
Right. Yeah.
So
Is
Does
it
the kids know
American
the
name?
story?
he's Jake and she's Vivian.
Vivian,
What's
yeah.
her last name?
Kim.
Kim?
Mhm.
Jake, Kim.
Yeah.
Okay. And the kids are Kim's, the last name?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Do the kids know the story?
No. They know that that they have a grandfather that lives over, and they've got some relatives that live over there, but they don't know the details. When they're
They
old
will.
enough,
Yeah.
yeah, they'll know everything.
Do they go to the Korean ward?
No, they're in a regular ward.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah. And their kids are in regular school.
And they've been sealed.
They
and
speak
everything.
English in school, and at home they only speak Korean because they want them to
Yeah.
to not let
That's
go of
good.
that language. Yeah,
Perfect.
they're cute little boys.
And they've been sealed and everything, so.
I don't know that.
I would assume they would have been married before they, probably even before they had children, if they joined the church.
Right. Yeah, I'll have to ask them that.
And then they'd be born under the covenant.
Yeah.
Their
The-
boys are how old?
Their boys are, I think, 5 and 3.
Okay. I'll bet you they were sealed.
Do they just know small families, or do they want more? I mean, not that it matters, but.
I think they're done. She's had a number of miscarriages, and I
Um,
think they're done. Yeah, but they did want more. But they've got these two adorable, cute little boys, and yeah, happily ever after, as best as it can be. They still miss home. Even knowing what they know, they still miss it. They miss the sight. They miss their friends. They miss family that they've left behind. They miss the food over there that they had. Kimchi, is it kimchi?
Kimchi.
Kimchi, yeah. They really miss that. She makes a really good kimchi, she tells me. But you never let go of what home is, right? You never let go of that. So, but they are grateful to be here. They're grateful for the freedom that we have, despite the mess that we see, right, in politics right now and government and the whole thing. It's so ugly. They say, they rise above that and they say, we're free.
Yeah.
We are free. We see that there's danger right ahead that like oh my gosh, right? Freedom
It's
is,
becoming more like North Korea.
yeah. Are we on a slippery slope, right?
We are.
Um,
They still have it so much better.
Yeah, they were asking an interesting question. You probably thought that was interesting too. The last question of the night, right? That man raised his hand and said, "What do you think of politics today?" And the whole thing, right? They don't want to get into that, right? They have issues. They have issues with Trump because he always says, "Oh, Kim Jong-un is this great guy," and they're just like, "Ah," like.
But they don't understand. It's all for show.
I know. So anyway, they don't want to get into politics, but I thought that he had a great answer. Duyan had a great answer to that question, and he said, the insurrection on January 6th, that whole thing that happened, that was a bad day, and there was probably some wrong choices that were made by a lot of different people in that situation. But he said, I can tell you that if that situation happened in North Korea, every person in that crowd and their families would have been executed. He said that's the difference between the United States and North Korea. Yeah.
They don't get to vote anyway, do they?
They're required to vote.
Oh, for the one person on the paper?
Yes. And there's another line that you can draw in someone else's name, but the security stands at the table and watches you pick up the pen, and they watch you vote. And nobody dares, right? Because if you write something else,
Then you're going to be tortured.
then you're
or
disloyal
killed.
to Kim Jong-un. And they're going to follow you home and haul you away. So everybody is required to attend and place their vote. And so North Korea will always claim publicly, we have 100% majority.
And it's a free election.
Does Kim
It's a
Jong-un-
free election.
Does Kim Jong-un have a son? Is he ever married?
It's all secret.
Oh, okay.
There are so many stories about that, depending what you read. We just don't know.
They say his sister is very ruthless.
Yes,
Kim Jong-un.
Well, was it her that killed the father?
the uncle.
For,
The uncle.
Hmm.
The brother.
Of all the
Kim
countries that I-
Jong-il was murdered.
of all
He
the
was
countries
poisoned or
that-
something.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
of all
That's the father
countries
of
that I-
Kim Jong-un.
Okay.
So yeah, I don't know all the stories, but it's a mystery. The Kim dynasty is just a mystery. Yeah, they really didn't know Kim Jong-un. When they announced him, they're like, "What? Who is this?
How did they?
Who is this person?"
Does he have children?
We don't know.
We don't know.
Probably.
She's
I don't
saying,
know.
yeah.
I
Who
don't know.
knows?
It's so. I just don't even have an opinion on it because I would read different things about it, and I just don't know. It's too secretive over there. So.
It's crazy.
So anyway, let's not leave with a damper on our shoulders.
No, I think it's
This is a little bit,
exciting they're here.
it's a little bit dark to think about that, and my heart just bleeds for my brothers and sisters that live on the other side of the barbed wire fences. But let's appreciate our own freedoms, right? Let's go forward appreciating what we have, the blessings that we have, the abilities we have, and I think we can just pray for North Korea, and I hope one day they'll be opened. These two would love nothing more than to take a trip back and see their family and reunite with friends. I don't know that will happen in their lifetime or not. I just don't know. But I say that God is in charge of that. Because it's too big, right? It's too big to comprehend. But we'll see what happens in the future. And in the meantime, let's appreciate what we have. Let's educate ourselves. Let's learn and recognize the differences.
You know what's hard though is, like when I went to China and I saw how they lived, they had the animals hooked right onto the kitchen. Anything what you see in pictures looks great, but when you're there, it's filthy. You think, if you had Clorox or,
Yeah.
And when I came home, because we were adopting, we could only adopt one at a time, and we didn't have money. I said, I would have brought 5 of them home, because even living in our garage, if we just lived in our garage, we have more than what they have.
Yes.
I said, I will never take for granted my running water. 2 weeks later, I was taking it for granted.
Right.
I can go back and think about it, but I don't even think about when I go to turn on the water every day. Remember what happened back then,
Yeah.
So it's so easy to fall back into comfort.
It is. It is. And that's just human nature, We can't beat
That's
ourselves
just
up
what
over
we're
that.
raised with.
Yeah. It's ingrained in us.
It's ingrained in us.
Yeah. But occasionally something will trigger, right? We'll get a trigger and we'll step outside of that and say, wow, how blessed am I?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, of all the countries that I have been to, the smells are unforgettable in Korea. And they smell like garlic and kimchi.
Yeah.
They sweat that, it's very healthy.
Well, it's
But
rotted
they-
cabbage, right?
Yeah.
It's cabbage.
And they think we smell like sweet dairy products. Which is probably because that's what we
I
eat.
swear.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me.
Oh, thank you.
Always love talking about this. It
And
was-
do you take Venmo?
Yes.
Okay, great.
I feel honored to have been able to tell this story and to tell it right and to tell it truthfully.
How did you find them?
They found, well, my publisher was talking to someone who had heard about their story because they had talked at a fireside or something. And he kind of knew the basics of the story. And this person said to him, knowing he was a publisher, said, you got to get your hands on this story. This is an incredible story. And so he immediately called me and he said, this is a Heidi book. You've got to meet these people. And I was in the middle of my 4th book, Bridge of Miracles, and I said, no, don't tell me about another book. I just got to finish this, And he said, no, really, when are you going to be in Utah next? Because I split my time between Arizona and Utah. And he said, I said, well, I'll be there in about 2 months. And he said, okay, I'm going to set up a meeting. And that was our first meeting.
Wow.
Yeah. So
How long did it take you to write it?
about 2 years.
About 2 years.
Yeah, it was about 2 years of interviewing and research and writing and editing, and it's a whole process.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, from start to the book coming off the press, it was about that long.
Were they pleased to see the book about them?
Oh yeah, they're so grateful.
Too bad they can't send one to Kim Jong-un.
I would be afraid they'd come hunt them down.
Yeah,
To find a way to fly a North Korean plane and just drop the books.
and just drop them. Yeah, all over the city, right?
Well, they can't fly over that. They'll shoot them down.
A North Korean plane.
Yeah, they'd shoot 'em down.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what we can do, but
Yeah, but they go torture their poor families. So.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
he feels he feels right now, Jake and Vivian both feel like the best thing that we can do is educate ourselves on what's happening. And then so that if the world understands what's really happening, maybe that will change things a little bit.
Well, and I think too, for our perspective, if and hopefully when North Korea's borders open and they have a lot of animosity towards us and we approach them with the gospel or whatever, if we can do it in an empathetic way, understanding you've been taught since you were born to hate
Right.
us and to be more gentle
Yeah,
with them with that understanding.
right. Instead of just get over it. You were lied to.
Right.
Get over it. It's not that simple.
Right.
Yeah. You're recreating their very existence and belief.
Right.
And I mean,
It's amazed me for the last 20 years or more, the Christian effort to get Bibles into China and to all, I mean, there are so many churches over there that are kind of hidden, but I've seen videos of them and they just are so positive and so grateful to read the Word of God, and I just think, gosh, it's hard to get into it every single day when you're doing other things.
Right.
Videos and trying to get that out. Anyway, but it's just really beautiful to see.
Yeah.
Because in some ways, the Lord has preserved, I know a lot of people that have lived over there in some of these block countries, and they say the people, one of them is George Pace and his wife, they taught over there, and he said, you know, you have 12 children? Oh, like, how did you do that? And you actually call her sweetie, like you actually love each other, and, you know, because they're so curious about how this big family thing can work. Like, but they had to be very careful. They could not say anything, but they kept saying, wanting to know, what is it you have? What is it you have? And, you know, kind of like the quote from the person that went to Israel. I said, you can't hide the light in their eyes.
Yeah.
Of the students, you know, that
Right.
came to the Jerusalem Center.
Right.
But I know another lady that worked over there, she said, I know that the Lord has preserved these people in their innocence, you know, as a people, and their goodness, and they're so pure and they're so imprintable and ready for the
Right.
gospel. And my world religions teacher at BYU, Spencer Palmer, he would tell us stories about, he'd get 3 a.m. calls from Spencer, said, Spencer, this is Spencer Kimball. Said, how many people do we have in the church that speak Mandarin, that speak Cantonese, that's what, you know, and it was really fascinating. He was so visionary. They say it's one of the most visionary prophets we've ever had. And he just had to know, because China was very important, and I mean the whole East, you know, block there.
Right.
And I also had my home teacher up in Washington State was the liaison with Dallin Oaks to China, and they had a sister city, or a whole state of Utah had a whole region that they were interchanging a lot of stuff going on. And he said we were so close to bringing the missionaries in to China, and then Tiananmen Square happened, and it just shut everything
Yeah.
down. So the Lord must have a
The
plan.
Lord is in
What's
charge.
going on?
Yeah, the Lord is in charge, and we just have to trust that. And I think our part is to educate ourselves and to have hope for them and to have empathy. And it's going to be one small step at a time.
I was just gonna say, my son is serving in Tokyo right now on mission, and they taught through Zoom, a father and son in China, and they have their own date for baptism in March.
Yeah,
how
see?
sweet.
So they're coming over, they've made their visa arrangements to come.
So they're teaching
They
them
come
over
into
in
Japan.
China?
They come into Japan to be
Oh.
baptized, and
Oh,
then they
wow.
go to China.
Wow.
Isn't that so cool? It's going to happen. It's just going to happen not as quickly as we want it to, right? We want to go from 0 to 100.
Well, that's why we need
We
the
wanna
1,000 years.
We just want, yeah, we just want to embrace that whole population over there and shake them and say, hooray, now let me just throw up on you and tell you the whole truth,
They're
right?
not ready to receive it.
They're not
ready to
No,
receive
it's
it.
gonna be
No.
really hard.
It's going to be small steps, which is going to be frustrating.
Too much, too fast.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not in caves, but I mean, they don't have electricity.
There are a lot of seeds that have been planted though, because like when I was in folk dancers, BYU was one of the most known universities over there besides Harvard and maybe, you know, Yale. Because we had dance troops going every few years over there, and you know, they'd have a general authority go over, they had the young ambassadors going, like a lot of entertainment, and through
Yeah.
just all their official channels, they really have planted a lot of seeds over
Right,
time.
right.
That's great.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.